Growing up, my parents always told me that I could do and be whatever I wanted so long as I put my mind to it. However, I was a little surprised at their reaction when I told them I wanted to be in law enforcement a couple of years ago. You see, I have always excelled in school, and my parents suggested that I pursue a more intellectually stimulating career path. When I asked them why they did not want me to be a police officer, they said something that has stuck with me through these years. They said, "Brianna, you're a smart girl. Your intelligence could be used elsewhere. After all, anyone can be a cop." So, being your typical teenage girl I am, I decided to prove my parents wrong. I attended my local police department's first ever Police Teen Academy last summer. Some of the highlights of that week include sitting in on dispatch, where my group and I got to witness dispatchers handle different 911 calls, watch a canine unit as he sniffed out hidden drugs on a truck in under a minute, practice different pressure points for someone who's resisting arrest, and visit the forensics lab where I got to practice fingerprinting techniques and analyze blood splatters. My experience at the academy not only helped me better understand all the police do on a daily basis, but it also helped me understand the different jobs that go into police work. But I still had a lot of questions. I left with an even greater urge to know whether or not my parents were right. Could anyone be a cop? These last several months, I have been trying to answer this question. I have been researching police work, and I even had the privilege of interviewing 3 police officers who serve in the Westminster Police Department. Today, I will be explaining to you my findings on the physical demands of a police officer, the mental and emotional demands of a police officer, and why, despite these demands, police officers continue to do what they do today. Now, all jobs have their demands, both mentally and physically. However, police work takes it to another level. Police training is both rigorous and intense. On the job, police officers have to be prepared to chase down a fleeing suspect or engage in hand-to-hand combat or even run 10 flights of stairs just to reach the emergency and then still be prepared to fight. Because of the physical exertion the job demands of its officers, the training has to be appropriately structured. Before I began my research, I assumed that police training just involved lots of push-ups, pull-ups, and running. And although that is part of it, there's so much more. The first officer I interviewed described his training as drinking from a fire hydrant. He said that there's so much thrown at you during those first 4 to 8 months of training that all you can do is absorb as much as you can. It's impossible to get everything all at once. Now, police training is structured a lot like military training. In fact, it's typically referred to as paramilitary training. The program is designed to push its trainees past their breaking points in order to strengthen their bodies and their wills. It is also designed to help future officers create effective fitness habits so that they can continue to meet the requirements of the job throughout their career. The third officer I interviewed described his training as both cumbersome and thorough. However, he said the real training is the first few years as a rookie. Those first few years are both scary and stressful. However, the training you receive while on the job is unparalleled. Not only is this job physically hard, but it is also mentally and emotionally challenging. Along with physical training, there's cognitive training, and oftentimes this is used through interactive simulators. My time at the academy was spent doing some of these simulators. To help you imagine it better, I was led into this dark room where a screen filled the entire wall. Police officers helped me put on a utility belt with all the typical tools a police officer would use. I was then put through 3 different simulators. Out of the 3 simulators, I used my taser twice and my gun once. However, I used my taser when I didn't need to, and I hesitated to pull my gun. Now, the officers in the room explained to me that these trainees would practice on these simulators for months until they can adequately assess the situation and respond accordingly. Now, I'm sure all of you can attest to the emotion of fear. It's very powerful. And when officers are called, it is typically because someone is afraid for their life or for someone else's life. But officers are people just like you and me, and when their adrenaline is flowing, and their adrenaline flows, they have to control this adrenaline and use it to push themselves through the fear and into the danger. Officers must be mentally prepared to push aside all fear and use it in order to protect others. The second officer I interviewed said, quote, "If you're not scared in this job, you need to get out, because fear is what keeps you alive," end quote. The first officer also said, quote, "Everybody gets scared, but when it's happening in the moment, you don't have time to be scared. You need to act so that the fear comes later." Although it is a powerful emotion that can make people freeze, fear can also push people into action. Trainees are taught to use their fear to push themselves through mentally and emotionally challenging situations. To give you an example, the second officer I interviewed told me about a time when she was mentally challenged and had to fall back on her training. She was still a rookie, and her partner were responding to a noise complaint in the area. They reached the house and they knocked on the door following protocol. However, instead of responding with the typical, "Hi, how are you doing this evening? We've received a noise complaint. What's going on?" her partner mouthed the word "gun" to her. Her mind began to race, and she said time went into slow motion. Thoughts like, "Is he going to shoot me? Am I going to have to shoot him? Are there hurt people inside? What will happen if I die right now?" all raced through her head. However, she was able to successfully push these thoughts out of her head and act. Her partner and her successfully went through the door and disarmed the suspect without any problems. No one was hurt inside. Because of her ability to use her fear to push herself through and into the danger, she was able to save lives, including her own. The physical and mental strain that comes with being a police officer can have lasting effects. The University of Buffalo in New York City has researched the effects police work has on its officers. They studied how the stress of police work affects an officer's mental and physical health. The results are just as I suspected. Officers are at a higher risk for high blood pressure, insomnia, increased levels of stress hormones, heart problems, PTSD, and suicide compared to the average person. A New York police veteran, John Violante, who was a part of these studies, said, quote, "Policing is a psychologically stressful work environment filled with danger, high demands, ambiguity in work encounters, human misery, and exposure to death," end quote. He later goes on to explain that he is not surprised by these results, and he hopes that an intervention comes about to help prevent some of these many health problems in this work environment. The primary researcher on this study has said that the most effective intervention will include teaching officers how to relax, how to view their challenges in a more positive way, and how to grow from their trauma. Now, despite these intimidating facts, police officers continue to do what they do. But why? The answer became clear to me when I interviewed my 3 police officers. All 3 of them possessed a strong urge to protect others, and their drive to lend a helping hand when they can comes naturally to them. Because of this, they don't necessarily think of how their job affects them, rather than they think about how they can fulfill their job to serve their people. And upon learning just how these effects affect officers, I began to ask myself, could I do this? Could I push aside my fear and run into danger to save someone? Could I have the strength and willpower mentally and physically to fulfill my duty to serve my people? I may not have my answer right now, and I may not have it for a while, but what I do know is I have a more acute picture of what this job looks like, so I can better face the challenges when they come. Thank you. Right. This is effective. Oh.